Well, hi, folks. I'm really pleased to say for this Team Fireside chat, I've got one of Team's amazing solo recruiters, Natalie Wells. And Natalie, it's a real pleasure to have you on our session today on one of our Fireside chats. I thought I know a little bit about your background, and I'll ask you to share that a little bit. But you come from a corporate world, and very successfully as well with Michael Page and Robert Half, and you sort of made a choice that to be solo and stay solo. And I wanted you to share some of that, because, and also some of the successes and positioning you've had as a solo, I think is pretty impressive. So yes, tell us your story, and welcome to the Fireside Chat.
Lovely. Well, Simon, thank you for having me. Lovely to meet
Yeah.
you like this. So where shall I start? I guess I was actually a finance graduate first and foremost, post uni, and after about 4 years of financial training, I got really disheartened with that and realised that it was really a career involving people that I was after. And so it was actually Michael Page that I joined, initially in their part qualified division, promoted to manager. This was when I was in London, actually. And after a while, I decided that I wanted to go and work for one of the more boutique agencies, one where they didn't have a strong brand. And because I actually really enjoyed the business development side of things, and I wanted to do qualified finance recruitment. So I joined Executive Connections. But I was probably only there a couple of years, 18 months, a couple of years before actually then met my now husband. And as life and profession kind of dovetail, I found myself actually spending a lot of my weekends back in Cotswolds, where he was from. And I saw that Michael Page were actually advertising at Swindon train station. And I still remember it to the day. Rennie Hayes, the director, he's now operating in a zoo in Australia, New Zealand these days, so a very different career. But his advert said, "Why are you commuting to London when you could be meeting up with Michael Page?" It was aimed to attract accountants, but instead they got a consultant out of it. So I moved back to Michael Page, so a second time, this time covering Wiltshire, Gloucestershire, Bath, Somerset, and doing qualified recruitment. I'm married, settled down, got 2 daughters. They're now 15, 13. And during that time, of course, we had the banking crisis. That kind of dovetailed with child number 1. So that was interesting, coming back from maternity leave and finding that, you know, everyone had wanted a piece of my desk whilst I was away. And I was given options of course you can have your desk back, but you'll find executive are kind of creeping down and the team, you know, slim pickings. So I actually said, no, I'll go and do this over here. So I actually set up a new desk for them doing corporate governance and risk. No idea what that meant at the time. I just knew that the regulator was insisting that the retail banks needed to have division there. And so, yeah, we're talking about 40 odd roles in Nationwide Building Society. Similarly, when Lloyds sold their mortgage book and TSB Bank was created, similar volume there. So very different to what I was used to, but it got me through the recession. Back into the industry and commerce market, and a handful of years on, come back after maternity number 2, and realised that really where my passions lay was working with the SME market, business owners. Only what was proven to be quite tricky was when I wanted to give them the best advice, quite often the role they'd brought me in to discuss was quite different to what they really needed. Sometimes they needed to go higher, sometimes they needed to go lower. But whatever it meant, if it was different to the role that had gone in to be briefed on, it invariably meant I had to introduce someone else in the team, because in the big corporate model, you kind of sit in this very precise box, and that's what was beginning to grate with me. Plus, this was pre-pandemic. A day a week working from home was really frowned upon. Almost like implying I was swinging the lead, whereas the reality is I got so much more done on that day. And of course, we're in a different, they're in a different place these days. It's different. Sounds silly thinking about it now, but it was the combination of things like that meant, actually, I never thought I would do this. It was never ambition of mine to set up on my own. But now, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I've now completed 5 years. I set up Natalie Wells Recruitment. So sat on the Wiltshire-Gloucestershire border between Cirencester and Swindon, really supporting ambitious entrepreneurial business owners in recruiting their financial trusted advisor, really, that first FD or first commercial value-adding FD. And I guess as a result of the pandemic and more virtual recruitment being conducted, that's taken me outside of the area as well. So, I guess recruiting up into the odd role in the Midlands, several in London, and also down in Devon. So that's where we are now, really.
Well done. That's an interesting target audience. How do you find your entrepreneurial SMEs?
Oh, I love them.
You don't have to give away. You don't have to give away a secret, but that's.
Oh, how do I find them? I thought you meant personality-wise. No, literally, how do I find them? Okay. Well, I think the first thing that I really focus on is time. You'll always be able to make more money, but you'll never get your time back.
No.
So as a recruiter, and I think this is what the corporate training gives you, you're always aware of whether something is taking you towards your goal or actually, it's a waste of time. So over the years, and certainly, setting up my own business, I got busy quite quickly. So I was able to then discern, well, what does that ideal client look like? And for me, it has to involve the decision maker. If the decision maker's not round the table, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
So in the SME market, that means I'm working with business owners, MDs, chairmans. In larger businesses, that might be an FD or CFO recruiting for their team. I do have a FTSE 100 client, and that's where it's a HRD, but I'd say it's quite unusual for me to be working with HR. It's normally directly into those who are going to be working with the person I hire. So coming back to time, and this is relevant as to how I find the SMEs, I thought the old days of, hitting the phones, as someone on my own, there's really not enough hours in the day to cover the market, particularly given the pandemic's taught us people are rarely working in the office as well. So unless you've got the mobile, it can be quite fruitless. So over the last few years, I've been really doing more networking with the audience that actually traditionally are very strong at networking with business owners. So rather than spend a few hours cold calling MDs, I'd rather go and sit with a bank relationship manager or an external accountant and talk about the problems they have with the small businesses that they work with. Because I quickly learned when I was recruiting SME FDs, the business owner generally recognizes they need someone when they can't borrow more money or don't know how to raise funds for expansion, or they've got a bit of a fractious relationship with their bank, or indeed they're expecting more of their external accountants. And all of these signs are that they don't have the appropriate financial resource in-house. And so, of course, if you build those relationships with those other third parties who are out on the road all the time and are doing the face-to-face meets, the networking, then they, I'm effectively getting further leverage by someone else referring my name. And I had one only just last week where I filled a contract for a financial controller, 12 months at 30%, and, there's no discussion about, the other agencies they're thinking of using, because that never comes up if you go and find the problem and provide the solution. So I don't wait for the vacancy.
No, that was where I wanted to get to. That's really good. And one of the things that impressed me, and you dropped it in, and I wanted you to do that because I was aware of it, that you're working with a FTSE 100 company now, which I think is amazing. I mean, the corporate firms must be so jealous of you stealing that away from them, because that's really powerful for a solo recruiter to be supporting a corporate business in that fashion. I know you work with Superfast Marketing. Has that helped you position yourself and your brand in a better place to give you the credibility to pitch for that bigger business?
Yeah, it's interesting, really. Superfast Recruitment. I've been part of the circle there for a good 3 or 4 years now, actually, quite a long time. I think when I first started out, I was that corporate recruiter, and I thought my website, my LinkedIn presence, I thought I had to, in order to succeed, I needed to blend in with the corporate recruiters.
Yeah.
And because, quite frankly, I was clueless about marketing. I didn't know what an avatar was. I thought they were blue people, aliens in a film.
Yeah.
So it was only through working with Superfast that I really got to understand marketing. It took me a good couple of years, really. It's a proper old education, but really understood what my avatar is. I can tell you they're male, they're in their early mid-40s. I could tell you that they're married, they've probably got 2 children, they like skiing with the boys in winter, and one of their stresses is how do they let go of their business to be able to go on that 2 or 3 week holiday in the summer with their kids and family. And that's where it gets really interesting, because if you really understand your audience, call out the pain points they have, and in an organized fashion thread that through your marketing, that's when you get both candidates and clients coming to you saying, your messaging just talks to me. You were describing me. I didn't know I was looking for, I had one, it was actually on Sunday, I had a candidate message me saying, I didn't know I was looking for a new job. It's your advert is the first one that I've read that's made me think about whether I want to go back into being employed. In jest, she goes, can you please stop putting such tempting messaging out on LinkedIn under my nose?
Yeah, that's good.
So that's when you know it's working.
You do.
So rather than blending in, trying to behave like a corporate, what Superfast teaches you is all about personal branding and how to stand out with all that noise on LinkedIn.
Yes, you're right. And with some authenticity that's attractive.
It has to be authentic. Warts and all, there's been photos posted of me post gym workouts, to show it's not all, polish and well constructed, but it's, reality.
Well done. And you talked about is there any sector that you're particularly attracted to? I know it's finance, but What about the businesses that these finance people work for? Is it a real mix?
No. So to be clear, I recruit for industry and commerce.
Yeah.
So I don't, my avatar is not in an accounts practice. It's not.
No, I realise that. Yeah.
It's not financial services. It is industry. And what that means is I tend to steer clear of, or rather, I don't target charities and not-for-profit either. You know, this is I'm after the entrepreneur who, I mean, I use it so much, it's probably a cliche, but you know, when you're digging for gold, you don't worry about the cost of the spade.
No.
So what I do is get them to recognize what having the right finance director by the side could do for their business. And so coming back to Superfast again, the work I've done with the ladies there is that I've then got case studies where I can demonstrate the results. So whether that's the company that wanted me to recruit a management accountant, I'd called them, said, I've heard you've had a resignation. He said, you haven't poached my staff, have you? I'm like, no, unfortunately, this wasn't through me, but I was aware he was looking. And he said, well, I like that approach. Come and see me. Turns out he needed what he really needed was an FD. I persuaded him to look at both. He did go with the FD. Within 3 years, his business had grown threefold, and he was approached to sell his business at a price he couldn't refuse. He is literally shopping for yachts right now.
Oh, wow.
And then there's another one in the Cotswold Water Parks here, who civil engineering business, 25 million turnover 4 years ago. MD was run ragged, trying to do everything. I explained what an FD could bring to the party. Within 6 months, they had found additional funding to start a new business, a new revenue stream, further expanded. And then this time, February last year, they actually went through a successful IPO and are now an AIM-listed PLC.
Brilliant. And
now about 80 million turnover. So I've got about four or five examples where these are entrepreneurs who didn't have an eye on the door. They didn't have an end game in mind.
No.
But within 3, 4, heading for 5 years, there's been a material shift in their success. And I think that's an example of how you can go in without competition and command strong rates.
That's tremendous. And also has your process, I know, has led you to support some of those clients with other specialisms as well at senior level, hasn't it? Because the process is similar. If they want a senior exec in another field, they've come back to you, haven't they, and said, can you help with this role? I took
a bit of persuading on this because, as you know, my roots are in finance. I've only ever known finance. So I guess this FTSE 100 is a good example of that. They first reached out to me, really because I did know the CFO. I knew the CFO. Actually, this is quite embarrassing. I knew the CFO really well. He knew, and so he reached out to me, and he asked me, who would I recommend in executive search to recruit his number 2?
Wow.
And I was like, well, me, of course. I don't know whether it was a trick question or you generally thought, I was, because today I was probably more SME or middle management in the large companies. But I persuaded him to give me a go effectively. And really, candidates done me proud. It's meant the CFO's been able to focus on external relations. His number 2 looks after day-to-day finance division. This was when they were acquiring their next largest company, their competitor. So they were FTSE 250 at the time. And this was just one example of where they were going to, you know, almost double in size overnight. And all the different disciplines needed upskilling because, you know, they were small, they were a leading 250, but they were knocking on the door of FTSE 100.
Yeah.
So HR director got recruited. She liked the deputy CFO and asked me to come and talk to her about, I think the next one was director of risk, which was my old discipline, if you remember, during the banking crisis.
Yeah.
And so I used video shortlisting. You know, everyone's short on time these days, but I brought in Hinterview actually into my operations in my first 6 months. So I've been one of the early users of Hinterview actually. That went well, and then quickly followed group treasurer, procurement director, health and safety director, as you're aware of, because you supported me with that. Essentially 5 roles and like 200 grand's worth of business from that one account.
Wow.
And where we are today, they are officially FTSE 100 now. That leadership team is growing, and I'm now looking at the succession plan at that next level. In fact, you know, I'm there later this week. Brilliant.
And just to close, where does Natalie Wells go now the next 2 or 3 years? What's the vision for developing your business, not growing your business, because you love the solo space? Well, how do you see things? How do you see the future 2 or 3 years?
It's funny, actually. You know, as you know, I'm a numbers person. So actually, I probably reverse engineer it. I start with the destination in mind.
I'd love people that do that. Yeah.
So I'm looking more like 10 years out. I want to, you know, 5 to 10 years, talking to my financial advisor, what do I need to have to be able, when will I know when to stop, really? With that in mind, you know, 21, 22 was my biggest year in 25 years of recruitment. And what did that teach me? Well, I liked it. I liked the results an awful lot, but equally from a time and energy perspective, I thought I can't do another year like that. You know, that's not sustainable. But you know, pandemic, you didn't know when the alert was going to run out. So over the last year, and this is actually with Sharon's support, because she's actually a coach as well as the recruitment marketing she does. We've been looking at my ability to delegate and let go, because I'm so protective of my time. In my corporate recruitment career, I saw that, you know, having employees or running a temp desk comes with stresses and curveballs when you least want them, which is why I actively avoid A, employing staff, and B, I'm 100% perm with the odd fixed term contract. So it's keeps it steady, but there are no curveballs in that respect. So far I've got you know, part-time VA, only pay for a few hours a week, and the reality is she's actually taking off more admin, as opposed to, she's not really in my recruitment funnel. So she's booking trains right now. She's looking for hire cars, because I've got a contractor I want to place, but he's got no car. So, you know, we're going to factor that into the negotiation. And then I've got an offshore resourcer as well, who is kind of searching job boards, etc. So what the next couple of years look like is more automation, next step of my marketing journey, and maybe a bit of AI thrown in there for good measure.
Fantastic. Well, Natalie, thank you. That's such a good story. And I think it's an inspiring story for the solos who are running around thinking, spinning plates and wondering, they've finished 2022 exhausted and thinking, can I do that again next year? But you've evolved with what you're offering and obviously doing extremely well. And you've got your plans for the future as well. So well done. I think that's an inspiring message. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Probably on the Zoom, but hopefully at a face-to-face meeting or even
at the conference.
At our conference, which is easier to get to, just down the M4 for you.
I know. Lucky.
Well, thank you for your time today. It's been wonderful.
Fabulous. Thank you very much.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.